Welcome to the Teach Big podcast, where big energy, big ideas, and big results are just the beginning. I am your host, Randi Whitney, and whether you're in year 1 or year 20, we're here to fuel your passion and help you teach big in every single way. That's right, BIG. Here, education is inspired, energy is required, and support for teachers is an absolute non-negotiable. I would greatly appreciate if you would like, share, subscribe so that you can become a part of our Teach Big community. This episode is all about being a principal at a preschool with the Teach Big mentality of content, craft, and compliments. Please help me welcome Rylie Saylor, principal of an early childhood in Kima, Texas, named Strawberry Fields. Randi, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be the principal of Strawberry Fields and a little bit about your school.
Perfect. I'm so excited to be here. I started out on an educational journey as just really extra hands. When I was in college, I was looking for something that would fill the space. I had no idea I was going to step into a space that would light my heart on fire. And as I got put into education, I realized that it was wholeheartedly where I was meant to be. It was almost like I was telling people my soul side, and I just knew that it was exactly where I needed to be. So over time, I moved into teaching in the classroom and taught kindergarten for a long time, and eventually became the consultant and executive director of Teach Big. So I did a lot of PD development post being in the classroom for teachers K through 12 on reading, writing, editing, revising, phonics, all the things. And I absolutely loved that as well. Definitely gave my life purpose for a very, very long time. You and I had a difficult conversation, I think, just in time, because Randi was super involved in both businesses, as she still is, but was running. Most of her time was dedicated to Strawberry Fields and was running Strawberry Fields at that time. And I jokingly made the comment that maybe we should switch places. And that led to our conversation about us kind of redirecting our energy. So I took over Strawberry Fields 3 years ago and have run that staff of 37 and 200 families and kids and parents and all the things ever since. So stepping into that principal role was definitely a huge shift in my mindset and where that energy was placed. But it was one of the best ones I've ever made in my life. It was great.
And I agree with you. That was a very difficult conversation between us. Not that it was hard between you and me, but the context of it was so hard because I love Strawberry.
Right.
And I love running a school. I love being a part of every part of it, whether it is the content or whether it is teaching teachers how to deliver information or whether it's dealing with parents or even the yucky ones. I loved the whole thing. I love everything about running a school. And so stepping back was very difficult. But honestly, I could not have done what I needed to do with teaching.
Absolutely.
That's impossible. You were the only person in my whole wide world that I would hand over my baby to. And Strawberry Fields is definitely one of my babies. But I had to go tend my teenager, which was Teach Big at that time.
Sure.
It wasn't too far off of COVID times, coming out of COVID, and then the huge shift in education that had begun and is still going on in public school education right now. And I knew that all of my attention needed to go there if I wanted to do it well. So I will forever be indebted to you for taking care of my Strawberry Fields baby and running that school with greatness and with a passion that you have. So, and that's why I wanted to invite Rylie onto the show, because I thought, oh my goodness, I do not know a more passionate principal, whether it's a preschool, elementary, high school, does not matter, than her. And so I thought it'd be so good to give early childhood educators this vision of what happens in a preschool and how is it run? How is it run like a typical elementary school, as well as how is it not run like a daycare? And I feel like for, 17 years we have been fighting that. No, we're not the daycare. It's not Strawberry Fields Daycare. We've been fighting that.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have been finding that. And I think that a lot of the state legislator stuff is really kicking into gear and
Mhm.
and kind of picking up where our philosophy on that is leaving off, because I think now they're starting to see that the early childhood education component is so important, and not just educationally but socially, the whole entire full
Right.
circle, if you will, for the preschool element.
I feel like it's our foundation, and for a long time, we over time, especially as
Mhm.
education has morphed, because I think over these years it's definitely transitioned and come to the space where we are lacking a foundation. And if you don't have a foundation, jumping into kindergarten skills is often where we then start it's almost from day one, we're playing catch up. So if you've got all these kids that are starting with you in kindergarten and you're already behind, it's almost this like never ending cycle of trying to play catch up, which I feel like so many of our teachers and administrative staff are battling against that consistently.
And I think we're seeing that in every grade level, not just those first and second grade who haven't had the preschool, but as a fourth and fifth grade teacher, you feel like you're playing catch up. And, I got a fifth grade teacher I talk about all the time in one of my seminars. And she said, all of this that you're showing is great, Randi, but it's only good for 50%.
Hmm.
And that broke my heart. I was like, oh no, what can I do better? How can I make it great for all of your kids? She said, oh no, 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 it's not what you can be doing. It's that these days, honestly, 50% of my kids cannot read
Right.
grade level.
Right.
And she said, and if they can't read on grade level, they can't do all the things they need to do. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, that is heartbreaking. She's talking about an 11-year-old. And at Strawberry Fields, most of our kids, with given just a couple of case scenarios, most of our kids lead reading Strawberry Fields. And I think they're 5. And she's talking almost double, a little
Right.
over double that age.
But I think that's the thing is lots of times the educational speed bumps we're running into in middle school, high school started with their foundation. And that's the craziest part is oftentimes, I mean, as a teacher myself, you tend to pass blame onto the teachers before you, right? It's just human nature. Yeah, to look back and think like, oh, I'm overcompensating for other people. But lots of times you are overcompensating for something that is generations deep sometimes. Because if you're talking a decade ago is when that foundation was laid and it wasn't solid, it doesn't matter how many times you rebuild on that cracked foundation, it's still going to be cracked.
So
And I think going back and repairing the foundation to begin with is how you solidify their education for years and years and years to come.
that is exactly right. That kind of leads me into our first question. So, what are some of the specific practices or mindsets that you bring from that K-12 PD background that you've had for so many years? What, almost 10 years with the jig, I think, that have made a difference in your preschool environment, in the classrooms, in the building as a whole, as the principal of the preschool? What have you brought from that PD environment, from all those great levels, into the preschool environment?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's a really good reminder that you're not just educating the early childhood student, but that you're educating the parent who needs to write an effective letter communicating their child's needs to a future teacher. You're educating somebody who's going to go on to be a doctor or to be a teacher or to work in a trade, or there's so much more that's happening. And what I think we often lack on is the ability to conceptualize that everything that we're doing is so much bigger than their current state of education, if you will. There's
Right.
so much more that's happening. Not only that, but the brain-based research that tells us that what you expose them to at these early childhood ages is what they will excel in for years to come. That's a huge deal because if I have the ability to expose these kids to everything under the sun that I can think of, I am opening the door to possibilities and then building careers and foundations and just excelling in the world. So that is my goal in all of it. It's not just to produce readers that are impressive when they go to kindergarten. I want to produce good, contributing members of society. I want these kiddos to not really understand why education comes so easily to them, but it just does. There's this ability to
Right.
think way beyond your own.
I can see that. And I can see that what you're doing, it is life changing.
Mhm.
It's not just for the next grade level because, oh, I need to be vertically aligned. I need to help the teacher after me. You're really thinking long term with this.
Mhm.
and we're talking 3-year-olds. So I think that is so important, and I love that you've pointed that out, that what we do in the early childhood ages and time frames in their sweet little lives isn't just important so that in kindergarten they're readers, just like you said,
Right.
but that this is a forever thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not just teaching their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. We are
No.
producing quality humans. And that sounds silly, but truly, like I want my kids to be and have that impact, even if they don't know where it came from.
And I love that. It's like we almost have a superpower
Mm-hmm.
that is existing that we're passing on to them inside of their own little brains and inside of their own little bodies that's going to show up where it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, they're only being came from. Love that. So, how has your experience working with the older grades? Because I know you did work with the older grades in your Teach Big Time. How has that shaped how you lead and support your educators on your campus?
Yeah. Um, Ultimately, I think the way you come alongside your team represents the way your team has an ability to come alongside kids. And when you are working in lots of these older grade levels, you see, and I know every teacher out there could attest to the lack of social emotional awareness and being able to process difficult things. Because oftentimes we are working so hard on educational milestones and we seem to forget that the ability to accomplish that educational milestone isn't occurring because they're getting in their own way. And there is a lot of like social emotional components, I feel like, that we are lacking from a young age that give them the ability to process things they may not be the best at yet, right? That power of yet kind of situation comes into play. So when I'm coming alongside staff is really having the end goal in mind. I know we've talked so many times about how we're both the end result kind of person.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to enjoy the journey until I know where we're going.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a huge component when it comes to coming alongside your teachers is making sure they understand where we're going. And all of that time spent in high school, intermediate school, elementary school, all of those kiddos really need to know if you are a kindergarten teacher teaching for the end result, which for most of these cases is college readiness or the ability to join the world in a working capacity. If I know that that's my end result, I can tweak the journey to get there effectively. And that I think is the really big piece is seeing where the gaps are at those upper grades and being able to fill them in at the foundation. Because again, it goes back to that cracked foundation. Yes.
Well, and that's to borrow from Stephen Covey and his 7 habits, right? That's one of those is begin with that end in mind. And that's exactly what you're describing right here. I think enough of us don't appreciate that because we're just so wrapped up in the moment of everything that needs to be accomplished in the moment. We're not always realizing that there truly is a meaning to this vertical alignment that we're filling in. So, are we preventing gaps or are we causing gaps and allowing them to happen? And so I love that you talk about closing those gaps based on what you see in the future as gaps of other students. So I know that you lead a team of teachers and administrators. You do that very, very well. How do you encourage your team to teach big in a preschool context?
I'm very big on coming alongside. There is this concept that I know everyone's heard a million times where it starts from the top down, but I really truly have tried to internalize the fact that it starts with me. The self-awareness and knowing that everyone is human and that everyone is going to hit roadblocks and everyone's going to make mistakes. And so as opposed to leading from the outside looking in, it's important to me to lead from standing right beside the person next to me. I want them to know that it's not about getting to that end result as an individual. It's about us getting to that end result as a team. And I realistically, that comes with knowing your people. And that's the thing is it's inherited to me that my students, my staff, our families know that they are not just a number. And every person that I show our school to, every person that I talk to, I make sure to hone in on the fact that you will be known in these walls. And that starts with my staff because we put so much emphasis on knowing our kids. But if you don't know your the people that are leading your kids, there's no way to foster effective leadership in that space.
And that goes back to when I talk about all of my full circle training, that you've got to know your content before you deliver it in a cute way. And a lot of times I feel like we talk to teachers about, oh, cute deliveries or this cute activity, this lesson. But the true story is you've got to back that up a little bit and put the oxygen mask on the teacher first, before she can put it on anyone else. And so giving her solid content and making her feel not just safe in that environment, but very, very authenticated and very appreciated, that the space she's taking up would not be the same without her in it. And I think that you do a really beautiful job.
Well, and I heard someone say once, I cannot remember for the life of me where, but people can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. And I think that is a really impactful thing in all of life. But in leading a team, if someone doesn't know how to effectively communicate, we can't put the expectation of effective communication on them because they can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. And so being able to go in and instead help teach effective communication is going to be 10,000 times more effective than me constantly correcting their communication skills. Because if they don't know effective communication, they're never going to have communication skills. So that's where I think that coming alongside them is we can lay out a list of expectations. But if people don't have the ability to meet them, then you're missing the point entirely. You need to figure out where to fill in the gaps for your staff just as much as you have to fill in the gaps for your kid.
So for you, the teach big mentality and how you treat your staff is really where the teach big mentality starts. Starts right there. Yes. And another thing too, I learned as an administrator, I learned that you can buy them as many lunches as you want. You can give out as many gift cards as you want. And people can say that what they really want is more money. But what I've also discovered is that's really not the basis of it. That's a crutch almost. Now, do we all want to make money? Of course. Right. But that's not what brings teachers into teaching. They knew before they got into teaching, they knew there wasn't a lot of money in this gig. They knew that. But they also knew that they wanted to make a difference and they wanted to make a change. And I think that what you're saying is really leading well into empowering the possibility of that.
1,000%. I think also anytime my staff, we do gifts or incentives or other things, that what we get the most feedback on or what is the most monumental in that space is a handwritten card, a acknowledgement with our parents on what you've done really, really well. Because ultimately, it just goes back to, so many things are rooted in so many positive elements, but to be loved is to be known. And when you can look at your staff and know them and intentionally, and literally every concept we tell our teachers they need to use with our kids, you need to use with your staff. When we talk about giving intentional compliments with our kids, like don't just walk by and say, you're doing a great job, but say, I love the way I love the way you connected each of your letters as you were focused. I can tell you really focused on your handwriting. It's the same concept with us as adults. To be able to walk into a classroom and say, I love the way that you are engaging with your students. I can tell that you really care about what you're teaching means so much more. Resonates. Yes. Then you're doing great on your lesson today.
Right. And there's a lot of research on when you compliment somebody on something, the likelihood of them repeating that is off the charts. Absolutely. So they're going to go back and they're going to play that in their head over and over. Likewise, they're going to also play when they don't have a leader like you, the things those leaders say in their head over and over, and they'll grow to live in that world as well. So you're creating an environment for them.
Right. Because
to thrive.
Yes. And not only that, but kids don't want to discipline their parents when disappoint their parents when they respect them. The same goes for adults. I don't want to let down the people that I love in my life. Even in my late 30s, I'm still worried about making sure that my mom is proud of me. It's the same concept. If you have staff that knows how much you love and value and respect them, they long to love and value and respect you in return. And we're in the business of relationships. If you were in a school, you were in the business of relationships. It's first and foremost, you can't teach a single thing if you don't have relationships.
Honestly, I couldn't have bottled that any better because you're exactly right about that. So let me ask you this. So what does big thinking mean to you when it comes to little learners?
It's a great question. I think it's thinking outside of the box. I think the ability to teach with the whole brain in mind, making things visual, verbal, tactile, kinesthetic is imperative. Lots of times as teachers, we will do that. I've told them 1,000 times and they still don't get it. And most of the time it's like, exactly, you've told them 1,000 times, but have you let them put their names on it? Have you shown them? Have you given them the visual instruction? I think teaching big is oftentimes, especially with early childhood, it's about their entire bodies. Do we have their little brains in mind or wrapped in? Do we have the tactile kinesthetic connection wrapped in? Are they using their voices? It's not about them all just sitting and listening and following directions and paying attention. It's about them being immersive in their educational experience, which I think with Teach Big, that's ingrained in everything that we do. You can take the simplest concept that most people don't realize can be tactile kinesthetic and make it tactile kinesthetic every single time. So being able to do that for your kids for something as simple as if I'm telling them the letter A, I want to make sure they can not just see it to say it, but there's a way for them to become that letter and to become that have that phonetical awareness in everything they do. It's just so easy for them to be hands-on, and it takes little to no extra work once you know how to do it.
Sure. One of my favorite things, I remember walking by your classroom one time and the kids were filing in. You were teaching kindergarten at the time, and the kids were filing in, and you were saying, come in and have a seat. And they were saying, I'll come in and have a seat. And so tell me more about that. I loved how you did that. I think you were a master at it. I had you do trainings when you were still a teacher, right? I was having you do trainings on all of that I saw in you every day, all the time. And then after that, follow-up question already, I just don't want to lose it. And that is, it seems like that would take a lot more energy. Did it take more energy and make you more tired, or did that kind of invigorate you? Because I can see people saying, oh my gosh, I would do that, but if I did that all day long, I would be exhausted. So tell me a little bit about what you did. Yeah. And then part B, tell me about how did it affect your energy level?
For sure. So my staff makes fun of me, and if you're listening, I'm sure you know exactly what's out of my mouth. But I always use the example of the life cycle of a butterfly because I had one of my kiddos. He was in my kindergarten class. He graduates high school this year, which makes me feel so old. But he walked up to me in the grocery store, and without any hi, hello, he just walked up and said, "Hey, caterpillar, chrysalis, butterfly." And I was like, well, at least you got one thing. I can write that. But anytime I give instruction, which there's so much knowledge in all of those things on the internet, it's a very powerful tool on ways to incorporate all of these pieces that ultimately going through and taking something that you're learning and giving them the visual, the verbal, and the tactile kinesthetic all at one time was the goal. So if I'm going to teach you egg, I'm not only going to show you a picture of the life cycle, I'm also going to have you say egg, and I'm going to have you put your hands in a little tiny cup, so that we kind of have the visual and the kinesthetic that goes along with it. This is something as simple as saying like, a noun is a person, place, or thing. And for those of you listening, I'm pointing at myself and then out into the world and at something on the table. Just because now I've got that tactile kinesthetic connection. So many times we think that lecture has to be flexure, right? Like we are just speaking and teaching to our kids, but you don't move their bodies. There's a reason they tone you out. There's a reason they zone out. We do it as adults. Anytime I was doing a PD, right? There are those professional developments where you fall asleep in the back of the room, and there's professional developments where you are engaged, and you know the difference between them. I guarantee you, you can tell me right now, the best PD you've ever been to and the worst PD you've ever been to. And that's because nothing about your brain has changed from the time you were 3, 4, and 5.
Right. We're still learners.
We're humans. Yeah, absolutely. So, you can do it with literally everything, even if that's giving them a hand motion, a verbal cue, and a visual of them watching you do it for instructions. Like you said, walking into a room. It's very, very simple. Did it take more out of me? Sure. And sure, you always said, and that's my go-to with my staff all the time. There's a good kind of tired and there's a bad kind of tired, and you get to decide how you go home at the end of the day. And I think that is the big thing. You have always instilled in us that you can't go home exhausted for all the right reasons or for all the wrong reasons. You're going home exhausted because no one would listen, and you had another meeting that could have been an email, and it just was too much that day, and the list goes on and on and on, right? Or you can go home exhausted because my kids learned so much today that I could not stop moving my body. And it's good for me. It lights my heart on fire. I want to engage with my kids. Not only that, but when they're engaged in that way, their brains don't have time to focus on messing with their neighbor or fiddling with something they shouldn't be touching or not following directions, because I am engaging them tactile, kinesthetically, visual, and verbally. So where is your brain having, if your brain has time to focus on something else, baby, then you are not engaged. And I think that's what I carried through my instruction in middle school and high school and all the things as well. We often think because they're going to look at us like we're crazy that you can't do it. And that's just inherently false.
Right. The older ones love it so much. When we go do student camps, as you know, we did it for many years. When we're in those junior high and high school groups, when we first started doing those camps with the older grades, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to
100%, they're going to eat me alive.
And then as we're leaving, they're like, when do you come back? When are you coming back? And poor little things, they've just been so funneled into lectures or auditory stuff. It's such a nice little
it's like
relaxing break. Yes. When I get to see it in a different way.
I'll never forget the kid who was like, Miss, I thought you were crazy this morning, but that was the most fun I've had at school ever. And I was like, what? Thank you, sir. So it just goes to prove that nothing changes. I mean, there's nothing changes.
We're eternal.
Absolutely. In every regard.
Right. So basically what you guys are getting a little taste of is Rylie and myself in slumber party mode, which we've had lots of slumber parties.
We have. Yeah.
Rylie, I'm not even sure how long this conversation is going to go on. And so I'm thinking, let's make this part 1, part 2.
Probably smart. Yes. That sounds great.
I think so too. So I think that's what we're going to do. What do you guys think?